Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. Joe here with Twofold Gun and Armory, and today's video is going to cover a lot of stuff. It is our first video assignment for FTH 212, which is the striker fired subcourse of the Handgun Specialist curriculum at Sonoran Desert Institute. Today is February 23rd, 2026, right around 6 p.m. And this is a timed assignment, so it's going to be quick, it's going to be faster, there's going to be a ton of information. If you want to know more, please leave it in the comments below. Let's get the conversation started and talk about it. With that being said, I'll be right back. I'm going to show you an exploded view of the disassembled PSA dagger, and let's go. As you can see, everything is taken apart. There are a couple of assemblies, such as the trigger assembly and trigger bar and everything, and then you got the recoil spring and guide rod up here that I've already put together, but for the most part this is the completely disassembled exploded view. And while we're here, this is a perfect time to note that there is no live ammunition anywhere in the workspace. Our magazine is clear, the firearm is completely stripped down, and so from a safety standpoint, we are good to go. In this part of the video, we're going to be discussing a few of the parts and their contributions to the cycle of operations. Starting with the magazine catch. The magazine catch has to do with the feeding aspect of the cycle of operations, and its entire job is to hold that magazine that you load secure and in place. Next, we're going to be discussing the striker. Your striker is going to be similar to a firing pin in that it makes the firearm go boom, so it has to do with the firing aspect of the cycle of operations. Third, we have the recoil spring. The recoil spring has to do with chambering in the cycle of operations. Whenever you send a round downrange, that slide is going to move to the rear. And it's that recoil spring's job to slow and stop that slide and pull it back forward. Fourth, we have the locking block. You guessed it, the locking block has to do with the locking aspect of the cycle of operations. This little guy's entire job is to lock that barrel to the slide and not come unlocked again until you send that next round downrange. Fifth, we have the actual barrel itself. Now, the barrel itself has to do with several aspects of the cycle of operations, but for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about chambering. The reason why I want to focus on chambering is because, well, that's where the round actually gets chambered. So if you look closely, you can see that little lip on the inside of the barrel, and that's where your casing bottoms out and seats. Lastly, we have the extractor. The extractor deals with the extraction portion of the cycle of operations, and its entire purpose is to extract that spent casing from the chamber. Now we're going to get into the critical dimensions of each of these parts. Now this is an assignment, so I did have to look some of this up, and I wanted to knock out those citations prior to getting into it. So for the magazine catch, I went to 10-8 Performance Store. For the striker, I went to HandWiki, Cajun Gunworks for the recoil spring, and Matchpoint USA for the locking block. For the barrel and extractor, I pulled them out of my brain housing group. So the magazine catch has three critical dimensions. You have the length, width, and the angle of the catch itself. You have four for the striker. You have this narrow striking point. You have the fatter guide point, a guide section. You have this shoulder right here for this spring retention. And you have the catch right here, which engages the sear. The recoil spring is more about the weight as far as the strength of the spring and how it affects the overall performance in the firearm. For the locking block, there's different designs and shapes for each platform, each manufacturer. So it's more about the metallurgy of the locking block. For the barrel, we got the twist rate, the overall length, and the metallurgy. And for the extractor, we have the overall length as well as the length of the extractor lip that catches onto that round. Next, we're going to get into potential malfunctions in the cycle of operations and where you should expect to see that wear and tear as the firearm gets older. So for the magazine catch, you're going to be looking at failure to feed. As it gets older, you could have issues with that magazine staying seated securely based off of the spring that is inserted inside the magazine catch. As that spring wears down, you're going to start having more and more play, and then you might start experiencing some issues. Next, we have the striker. The striker is going to be almost specifically a failure to fire, and the typical damage that you would see wear and tear is going to be damage to the striker point or damage to the spring. Now, the spring could become brittle over time. It could wear down. It could break. It could lose that elasticity that pulls it back when it disengages the sear. The recoil spring could be a tricky one because a lot of times you're dealing with a level of modification. And when you're dealing with that, you're introducing the chance for user error. And say you go to the store and you purchase an aftermarket recoil spring. You could put one in that's too light for your particular firearm setup. And when it's too light, maybe it doesn't have the strength to restrain that slide, and it's going to come back forward too fast and catch that round, causing a stovepipe, failure to eject, or it could be too heavy and not allow the slide to move enough. So you're going to have essentially a failure to feed because it's not going to be able to not only eject that previous round, but it's not going to move back enough to be able to get behind that next round and pull it forward. For the locking block, I had the help of McCluskeyArms.com, and basically the malfunctions for the locking block would be caused by a misalignment. And when you have a misalignment of the locking block, you're not going to be 360 degree locked. And then you could have a decrease in accuracy. You could have gases escaping where you don't want them to be escaping, and potentially cause serious bodily injury to the operator, serious damage to the firearm. The barrel is far more self-explanatory because most of the malfunctions and most of the damage and wear and tear can be mitigated through use of proper maintenance techniques. A couple of the places that you want to keep an eye on are going to be the crown. The crown is the last thing that bullet touches before it leaves the barrel. And if there's damage to the crown and those gases expand unevenly, it's going to throw off your accuracy. You also want to look for excess buildup and rust forming from inside the barrel. This could lead to inaccuracy issues. Lastly, we have the extractor. Now, the extractor, the one thing you're going to want to look at is the lip of the extractor that latches onto the casing. From a failure to extract standpoint, as you're putting more and more rounds and as you have metal on metal against this constantly day in and day out, it could start to wear down that lip. For any firearm, especially used ones, it's good to have a qualified gunsmith go over them to make sure that they're functioning properly. A couple of the things that a gunsmith could do to avoid causing unnecessary damage to components is proper maintenance and knowledge of parts. And what I mean by knowledge of parts is being able to know where to look for the dimensions of certain parts new, so you can see where the biggest areas of concern are when it comes to wear and tear over time. Two other components that interact with the 6 items that we talked about earlier are going to be your slide and your trigger subassembly. And with those two, you're pretty much going to have all of the meat and potatoes for a fully functioning firearm. If you look at your slide, your recoil spring and barrel are going to be in here. Your striker is going to be in here. Your extractor is right here. And the other 2 parts are in the frame that interact directly or indirectly with the slide from below. For the parts replacement portion of this video, I'm going to talk about the barrel. Now, firearms vary in complexity, but for this platform, I'm probably going to set aside about 2 hours for the barrel. This will allow me time to properly install it. It'll allow me time to take proper measurements, and it'll give that customer the peace of mind that they are receiving back something that they don't need to be worried whether it's going to work or not when they get back out to the range. Some of the specialty tools I might need are headspace gauges as well as inert munitions for testing the cycle of operations and making sure everything is functioning properly. So here is our completed product. The last part of this video is going to be the 8 steps of the cycle of operations and a functions check using dummy ammunition. I have 2 dummy snap caps right here. It is inert ammunition. I have an empty magazine that they will go into, and then I have a unloaded PSA dagger right here, and need to visually and physically inspect that the chamber is clear, there is no feed source, and this firearm is clear and safe to work on. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to load these dummy rounds into this magazine and get started. So the first step in the cycle of operations is feeding. You're going to feed that firearm with that ammo source and then release the slide forward. And when you release the slide forward, it's going to do two things. It's going to chamber that next round in that feed source, and it's going to lock that barrel. And the next step is going to be firing, and you're going to fire. And what happens here is if it were a live round, the slide would come back automatically, and three things would happen. The pressure would unlock the slide. The extractor would extract that spent casing from the chamber, and the ejector would eject it out of the firearm. So I'm going to do it slow just to show you, but we're going to run through all three steps real quick. So after it's fired, it unlocks just like so and extracts it from the chamber, and that ejector would then eject it. I'm going to get that out of there. And the cocking step is when that slide comes back forward and does it all over. Now that it's back forward, I'm just going to do it one more time just to show you that it is, in fact, working correctly. Full speed this time. So we got firing, and then that slide would come to the rear, and all of those things would happen. And that is the function check, and everything is working great. That is also the 8 steps of the cycle of operation. You have feeding, chambering, locking, firing, unlocking, extraction, ejection, and cocking. Thank you for joining me for this video. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. Also subscribe to the channel. It's the best way that we grow together. I'm Joe with Teufel Gun and Armory, and I'll see you next time.